This is the third and final part of my dialogue tutorial. First thing we need to do is to add the interface to the dialog box. So we open up the dialog box and go into Graph, Event Graph or wherever, and click Class Settings. And down here where it says Implemented Interfaces, we need to add the dialog interface to it. Now that that's added, we can go into the dialog player and add some stuff in here. So let's just clear all this out. Actually, we do need a begin play. So you get a begin play, and then we want to get the owner of this component. So basically this component can be put onto any other blueprint, but we're going to be putting it on a controlled character. So this will get the blueprint that it's attached to. And we want to get actor begin overlap. It's bind event to. And this basically means if a actor overlaps with the owner, it will fire off this event, which we can add a custom event and call this overlap. And we want to get the other actor, and we want to component of class, get component by class, and look for the dialog activator. And the dialog activator will be on anything that we want to be able to talk to us. And then we want to check if it is valid, meaning does this other actor have this? And if it does, we want it to promote to a variable, and we can call this the NPC in area. So whenever we overlap with an actor that has the dialog activator on it, it will set this to that. And now we also want to get end overlap and do the same thing, just the opposite. So add a new custom event, end overlap. We want to get the component by class, which we can duplicate it and save some time, is valid. And if it is valid, then we want it to set NPC in area to nothing, meaning if we stop overlapping with an actor with the activator on it, then it will just remove the reference to them, so we can't talk to a NPC from across the map, for example. Now, in the same blueprint, we need to add another custom event, and let's name this one Start Dialogue. And we want in the inputs a NPC DT, and then get a data table. And we also want to get the activator as well. So dialogue activator. Now we also want to create a new variable in here called in dialogue. And we want to make a branch. I'll plug this in. So if we are not already in dialogue, it will move on to the next thing. So if we're not already in dialogue, it will set in dialogue to true. And now, because we want to bring up a widget that we can control, we need to get the player controller, get player controller, and we need to set it up so we no longer control the character walking around and we just click. So we need to show mouse cursor, true. And we also need to set move ignore input to true. And we also need to ignore look input as well. So this basically means we cannot really control the character anymore. It's just the clicking inputs that will matter. And after this, we also need to set game input, game and UI. So it still takes button inputs, but we can also click on UI now. And let's flush input as well. Now we want to actually create the widget. So create widget and create a dialog box and set that as a variable, promote to variable, and call this dialog ref. So it's the reference to the dialog. And we just want to add this to the viewport. So now it's added onto the screen. And now we want to drag out of here and do initiate dialog. And we want to grab a reference to self for the player. We want to drag through here, get the NPC DT from there, and also get the activator from here and plug it in there. And this right here will take you into the UI mode and it will create the widget. Now that we have added it onto the screen, we now want to be able to remove it. So let's make another custom event and call this one stop dialog. And basically do the opposite that this does. So we want to set in dialog to false. We want to get this. To shortcut this, we can just select it all by holding Control. Copy and paste. Drag that here and just tick everything false. And then change this actually to game only. Set input mode game only. So now you're no longer able to click on widgets, it's just the world and the character. Let's flush input just in case. We also want to get the dialog ref and remove this from parent, meaning it basically destroys the widget so it doesn't exist anymore. Now we want to start adding things to the dialog box. So we go into the graph, and now we want to implement event here. So now we've got this, and this is being called from here. So everything that we're plugging into here is now going to be coming out of here. So we want to do a do once, just in case it somehow manages to do it multiple times. We want to promote this to a variable so it knows what the player is. We are also going to set this as a variable so it knows what the DT is. And we're also going to set this as a variable so it knows the activator as well. And now, with the DT dragged out, we want to get data table row names. And we just want to get the first one, so get a copy of 0, which is the first one. Everything in Unreal starts at 0, so just think about 0 as being number 1, and then 1 is the second thing. So 0 is the first row name, which is the first line of dialogue, and we want to promote this into a variable and call it current row. So this is the row that is currently being displayed, basically. And then we also want to go around here and get data table row. And then get this. So it will get the specific row out of it. And now we want to create a new custom event. And let's call this dialogue text. And we want to add an input. Call this... it doesn't really matter what it's called, but let's just call it dialogue. And change this to the dialogue struct. And then we want to call this event here dialogue text, and then drag that in from here. So now it will get the data from the data table row and plug it into here. Now, over here at dialogue text, let's split the struct pin so we get all of the individual variables inside the struct. And let's grab the options box and clear the children. So this basically means whenever a new piece of dialogue comes up, if the last state was an answer state, so we added options to click, it will remove those options. Now we also want to create a new variable called output and make it a string. This is going to be what the text being said by the NPC is. So we want to also reset this to nothing. And we want to get characters as an array. This will make sense in a minute. And we also want to promote this to a variable and call it, dialogue mode. But we just want to set this to none. So basically this right here resets before adding new text and new options. So now we want a for each loop, which basically is a node that goes through every single thing inside of this array. And this array will have every single character in that string as an individual input. So it just goes through every single input and does this every time. But I'm going to make an addition to this. So if you double click it, it will open up this. And let's find for each loop. And make a duplicate of that. And name this for each loop delay. Basically, alright, I've already got one on my PC. This is specific to your PC. So for each loop delay here, all I've done is add a delay here after the assign and hooked it back up to here and added a new input for the amount of delay you want, And this basically means every single time it goes through one of the array items, it has a delay between starting the next one, and that will create the typewriter sort of effect. So because I've already got that in here, we can do a for each loop delay. And as you can see, the delay's here. And I set mine at about 0.25, meaning it's quite fast, but it still has the typewriter effect. And what we want to do here is grab the output and append it, which basically means add. So it adds the next character to the output, and we want to just simply set the output as output plus the next letter. And then we also want to get the dialog text and then set the text to this as well. So now it will go through and add one letter at a time to the text box. When that's set up, we go, when this is complete, we want to set the dialog mode to whatever this is here. And then we want to have a branch and have an equals equal enum and check if it's an answer. If it is an answer, we want to, for each loop in here, just a normal for each loop. So it goes through all the different options. So if there's just one option, it'll give you that one option. If it's two, it will create 2, 3, 4, however many you want. And it will go through here and create widget. And this time it will be creating dialog options. Let's split this open. And we want to set owner. Yep, we need to go into this actually. We can shortcut it by pressing this here and then go into dialog options. We actually want to add a variable here and call it owner. And then look for dialog box. So it will get a reference to what it's inside, basically. So we want to set owner and then self. So now it's going to set its owner to the dialog box. And we also want to go back into here again and make another variable called option. Button. Option. Let's do option name. So it's the name of the option and make it a name. And go back into dialog box again and set option name to this. So now this will be what the option's called. And we just want to get the option box and add child, meaning it's going to add this widget into the options box. Now back over here, we want to create a new custom event and call this one next row. And this right here is going to basically go down to the next row in the data table from here. So we are going to get the current row and the NPC data table. So you want to get data table row names, and we want to find an item. So we want to find this row, which will tell us what index it is, meaning how far down it is in the data table. And all we want to do here is add 1, so it goes down 1 row. And then we want to get a copy of that row and set current row to that. So this is basically getting the next row and setting it. And then we want to get the NPC data table again. Get data table row and get the current row name, which is the next row down. And when row found, we want to call dialog text again and plug that in. So now, whenever next row is called, it will just go back, do this again, and set all of the text to the next row. And I did actually forget something here. The NPC name here needs to be set to this every time. There you go. Now, back over here again, we're going to create another custom event and call this one select row. And what we need in the inputs of this one is row name, and set this as a name. And we want to set the current row to this row name that we're giving it. And then we're going to get the NPC data table, and we are going to get data table row and get this row. And then when it is found, do dialog text, plug that in. So this will be when we select an option, it will fire this event, and that's what we're going to hook up now. Now, inside dialog options, we want to get rid of this event and this event, and on event construct, we want to make a new variable here and call it display option text, and make this a string, and get the option name and set it as that. This will make sense soon. And then after that, we want to replace a space, so just press the space bar once in here to nothing. And then we want to set this as the option. We're doing this because in data tables, it doesn't allow you to put spaces in the row names. So this basically removes the spaces so it can work. But we also want to get the option text and set text to this. And now we need one more thing. Click on option and the plus on clicked. So this is when the button's clicked. We want it to get the owner, not set it. We want to get the owner. And we want to fire off the select row function. And we're going to plug in option name here. We have one more thing to add to dialog box. Let's add a new event and call this mouse pressed. Mouse pressed. And this will be whenever the player clicks, this event will fire off. And let's get the dialog mode and do a switch. And what this does is, depending on what state it's in, it fires off the different ones. And what we need is, if it's listen mode, it is next row. So if the piece of dialogue doesn't have any options to click, it will be listen, and it will just go to next row when you click. And then in exit, we want to get the player, or end, sorry. On end, we want it to do the end dialogue. Stop dialogue event in the player. And then back into the player, we need to add a few more things here. Let's add it here. We want to make it so E key, and then we need to find E. So when the player presses E, it will get the NPC in the area. Check is valid. So when you press E, it will check if this is valid, meaning there's an NPC in your area. And if it's true, it's going to get NPC get data table, and it's going to start dialogue and plug the data table in here and the activator in here, and that will start this. And then next to it, I'm going to put a left mouse button, meaning when you click, it will get dialog ref and is valid. So basically, if there's a dialog box active, it will get the reference as valid, and it will fire off mouse pressed, which we just made. Now let's create a data table. So in the data table folder, we want to create a data table and use the dialog struct. And then let's name this test. Now, when we click into this, we won't have any rows here, so let's add a new one. And let's name this one intro. It doesn't actually matter what the first one's called, but we'll call it that. And let's do NPC name tester. Let's make the listen mode, the dialogue mode listen for now. And let's make him say, "Hello, I am a test." And then that's our first row. And now if we copy and... Wait, can we do that? Yes, we can Control and D to duplicate it. And let's name this question. And let's change this to answer now. And then we can be like, "How are you?" And then we want to add two options, one for yes and one for no. So we go into options, click the plus, then open it up and make the option text say yes. And then we do another one and make it say no. And then we want to, let's duplicate the first one again and call this yes. It needs to be the exact same as one of these or it won't work. So the yes one will be end, meaning when we click, it's going to close the dialogue system. And let's go with "That's great." And then we want to duplicate this and call this one no. And then make him say, "Oh, that's not good. ... So that is intro. "Hello, I'm a test." Then we click, and then he says, "How are you?" And then two options will appear. And then depending on which one you click, it will say yes or no. And that's a very simple question and then end piece of dialogue. Now let's open up the test blueprint that we made at the beginning and open up the full blueprint editor. Let's add a cube and also add a box collision. And let's make this collision 3, 3, 3. And let's also add the activator to it as well. And let's add the default to test data table. And now, let's find the third person character. You can add this to your own character if you're doing it in an existing project, but let's open up this and let's add the dialogue player here. And now all of the functionality that we just did in here is now in the third person character without actually having to edit anything. And this should be all done now. So let's grab the test and just chuck it in. And let's click play. Let's full screen that. "Hello, I'm a test. How are you? Yes or no?" Let's say yes. That's great. And then, "Hello, I am a test. How are you?" No. Oh, that's not good. Also, I don't know why I put it yes and no to an answer that says "How are you?" but you can see it works. And yeah, that's it working now. So you can create your own data tables, have as many different NPCs as you want, and just have fun with it. I hope this tutorial has taught you some new things, and I hope you have fun using your brand new dialogue system. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.